All right, welcome back to Level Up Podcasts. Level Up was developed to facilitate real, raw, and challenging conversations with minorities about their experience in the workplace. I'm Terry Vesley, and I'm going to be your host today. Today's guest is Tony Lee. Tony is the Senior Director of Global Talent Acquisition for Contentful. Thank you for joining us on the virtual couch today, Tony. Can you tell me a little bit more about Contentful?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Terry. And what can I tell about Contentful? We are a SaaS startup, Series E, which means we've probably been around longer than most startups. That's hopefully already a good sign. But we're one of the leading global CMS platforms, and so content management. You think of like your WordPresses, Webflows, Sitecores. Contentful is a tool that has in a space that websites have been around for a while, but the technology to build those websites hasn't really upgraded very much. But the tech world has kept evolving, literally every second, every day. But the websites have not. So we've built a platform that's very developer, marketing, content creator friendly. That's very much a enterprise solution that's resonating really well. So because of that, we've luckily, thankfully, hit quite a hyper growth in the last this year. So.
Wow, that's exciting. It sounds like you probably work with a myriad of client sizes, etc. With your company.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of clients out there are anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 to 50,000 employees.
Wow.
You think of it just like a lot of your corporations and your digital platforms that need to reach audiences about their product or their content, or have a mobile friendly solution off the bat. But even your bigger partners, like when you start having to spin off multiple websites or multiple products, that's kind of the lure of our product too, is you can rinse and repeat without having to recreate the wheel, which ends up usually what happens a lot with your older CMSs is if you launch a new product or a sister website or a different company or just another page, or you want to create a COVID response section to your website, it's like you have to recreate a whole new website in a way. So we eliminate that problem and mobile first. So it's exciting. But with that also comes hyper growth, and we weren't sure how COVID was going to affect us. So we, like most companies, we stopped and tried to figure out what would happen. We're in a lucky space being digital SaaS, but also content first. And so it's a space where if you're going to survive in the pandemic, it really was about how do you go digital. And so we were that solution for quite a large number of people, which then fueled this hyper growth of how do we keep building and getting ourselves out there. But then with hyper growth also comes, wow, now half our company, and soon to be almost all of our company in a way, is going to be brand new. So there's not just a product growth push. It's also like, wow, what do we do with these people? Do the people we have the same skills that we need for tomorrow? And who are we bringing in? How's that shifting our culture? And who are we bringing in? And what are we addressing in terms of diversity, talent, skills? So it's just an interesting story we're writing as we go along this process and this path.
Well, that's great.
Hey, real quick, guys, sorry. I'm getting some static. I don't know if we can try to reset sound a little bit. I can still, kind of hear what you're saying, but there's some feedback.
Yeah, I did notice that too.
I don't, so it's probably me then. Let me switch to my headphones. How's that? Static on?
Yep, that sounds great. Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Go back for it. Thanks.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Yeah, it's interesting how companies have been able to navigate well through these times. You know, if anything 2020's taught us is to be resilient and agile. And so it's great. And it sounds like Contentful has very much done that. So that's great. Um, so obviously we're very interested in your journey and would like to hear more about your background and how you got where you are today.
Yeah. I mean, this could be I don't know if it's a pay a ticket to the movie, get some popcorn kind of conversation, but I could easily make it an epic. But the short version I would say is, grew up in the Bay Area. So I've been lucky to grow up in Silicon Valley in the sense of just kind of being close to what's new, what's hot, which kind of has driven my desire to keep expanding, growing, knowing what's happening. I'm kind of one of those first adopter techie kind of people. And so I've tried to get into the spaces that I feel like I can make a difference and hopefully is making a difference in the world. But that's always been my kind of desire. In the middle, trying to get there, I felt like I got knocked around a little bit, and not knocked around, but just my parents immigrated from Vietnam, and to raise our three kids, they had a Vietnamese restaurant for 27 years in Menlo Park. And so I grew up in a restaurant. I actually thought at one point I'd probably own it. The second I turned 18, they said they sold the restaurant saying, "This is not your life. You're done. So go find your own path." And then the restaurant disappeared. So even though I've always been very techie in computer science, wasn't sure what to do and what I knew how to do it. Going to school for computer science, I ended up in retail and then thought that was going to be my life and my career because I got really into it. So I did that for 5 years. It hit me like a ton of bricks, that not to knock on retail, but at the same time, nights, weekends, low pay and bad raises was just not for me. So found recruiting and then started in agency world where I was lucky to have been exposed to quite a bit of companies in Silicon Valley. And so everything I grew up with, wished for, had led me to a path of, and my computer science degree that I then switched to business administration. It all kind of accumulated into this recruiting career that really then set me off on this fantastic path of kind of my love for tech, but my love for retail, hospitality, that then went into corporate. So I went from agency to corporate and realized I loved managing and process and data and understanding why things happen and the relationships you have with the candidates and the hiring managers and the executives, and how hiring has, especially nowadays, like I saw a shift too of how people are so important to your success, and if a company doesn't recognize that, then they're not going to succeed. And so then being part of the recipe of people's success was, well, hiring is probably one of the most important things any company can do. And so that became my job of how do I hire the best or find the best? And the best isn't necessarily you have all the right skills for the role. It's more, are you the best fit for this company? Will you succeed and be motivated to do your best? And will that translate to the company? And so it's been an interesting philosophical journey, I guess, in a way, or almost humanitarian, but that wasn't the intent. I mean, at the end of the day, I also want to have a great career and make money, but I enjoy what I do.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I've been in recruiting my whole career, and there's definitely, it's just such a rewarding field, from even hiring recruiters myself and seeing them go a different path in their careers, and are helping, people achieve their overall career objectives. It's a good feeling to help people get to where they want to go and be happy.
I love it. I mean, I'll admit too, and if anyone's listening who more than likely is in the recruiting space, it's also a roller coaster. You
Yes.
20 hires yesterday and one person declines today, and like your whole week shot. But but it's a good job though. I didn't think this would be the space that I fall in love with, but it's my career now.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah, I always kind of say that, for lack of better words, people are our product, and they can change their mind, and they have life events that occur, and things of that nature. So you have to navigate it as best you can when those things
Yeah.
happen. Well, obviously, I hear some little kids in the background, so it brings me up to another
Yeah.
question: is being a parent and having to deal with the COVID impact, obviously. How have you been able to navigate that when it comes to work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, a good tidbit would be I joined Contentful in the first week of San Francisco lockdown. So in fairness, I accepted the job a month prior, sometime January, February,
Wow.
and wrapping up a few things, thinking that I'd go to the office, San Francisco. I knew things were happening in the world, but not that they'd locked down the city or the state or the country. But my first week was virtual, and I've been virtual ever since. And I was supposed to travel to Berlin, where our other headquarters is, at least once or twice every quarter. We're opening an office in Denver. I've hired a new team, basically all in Colorado, and I've yet to meet any of them. So it's so that dynamic is one thing. Then having an 8 and 4-year-old who Zoom, scream, run, play, sleep,
Yeah.
is also interesting. So it's in the beginning, I feel like it was a distraction, but at the same time, my wife and I found a way to balance and make it work, and it was nice to be home, nice to be part of everything. And then for a while, it was also almost like I can't get any work done. Like, this is
Yeah.
you want what? You want mac and cheese? Like, can I finish my meeting first? Stop playing the video game. Okay, here's your iPhone. Let me finish the meeting. And so, but it's like life, you adjust and you adapt. And so I feel like we have a good cadence now. Not that I want to keep doing it or have it last forever, but I was used to separating work and life. Like, they obviously would blend at some point, but you'd go to work, come home, and you still email and do this and that. But for the most part, they were separate parts of your life, but big parts of it. So now it's just, how do you balance and blend the two? And so I will block time in the middle of the day so I can make sure I am there during my kids' lunch, and then certain meetings with them, and do homework, and I trade off with my wife. But it's the biggest difference now is in the same block of time doing two completely different things, like math, arts and crafts, and then go have 4 candidate phone calls and an executive presentation. So
Yeah.
but I'm enjoying it. What's good and bad is that we've gotten used to it. What's bad is I don't want my kids to get used to it, because I want them to go to a playground and have friends and go to school. But in fairness, I'm actually enjoying it. Like, it's nice to take a lunch break, not to drive home, and say, let's go ride your bike in the garage, and so
Yeah.
so yeah, the world, whatever happens next, will be interesting, because I'm sure there'll be a blend of this in the future. I mean, even bring it back to the workspace, where a lot of companies have gone fully virtual. Some have not made an announcement about what they're going to do with their workspace, and we're fairly confident that where we're going to go in the future is this blended space, where there's so much value being in the office, but at the same time, do you need to be there 5 days a week? Does every role need to be there 2 days a week? And so it'll be interesting discussions. For now, we're not bringing discussions up because we're all fully remote. So why distract us from what's going to happen next until we know when next is? But what happens next will be an interesting, different world for us. And we've learned to be productive in our space today.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of interesting points. It's funny too, I'm a manager in my position that I do, and how things have changed now, where it's so common to be having a Teams meeting with your entire team, and you've got a couple people that have a baby sitting on their lap, and or they're feeding a kid while they're in the midst of their meeting, and it's just become part of our world every day, and it's nice. So it is interesting to see, where we're going to be headed in the future with all of that. And then
Yep.
you're right about, real estate, how much do we need, and will a full staff be back to work? Will there be other pandemics? And this is the beginning of just a different world that we're going to be living in.
Yep.
But you got to hand it to people. People are resilient and agile, and, you deal with the cards that you're dealt, and you change how you have to change. So it's interesting.
Exactly. I have to say though, one thing for sure is my workspace has always been kind of like where I'm not, the toys my kids aren't allowed to have, and the ones my wife doesn't allow me to have at home. And so I've always made my work desk into like my 10-year-old bedroom, and which is basically just a lot of like little Star Wars, Star Trek toys and whatever. They've all been sitting in a box for over a year now, and if the future for us is hotel desk and hot seats, then I gotta figure out a new way to not throw in my toys, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But
Makes complete sense.
but to your point, just one quick comment is, for sure, where before, like, you try to avoid at all costs, if you're working at home or in Starbucks or wherever, to like, how do I hide in the corner? Where can my how can my kids not bother me? Like, tape the door shut. But now it's just so, people, I think we Zoom so much today. It's actually kind of a nice distraction to be like, all of a sudden, oh, there's your furry friend or your 4-year-old intern, and people actually want to stop and talk about it. And to know it's much more widely accepted nowadays. And I think it's actually, when you can't meet one-on-one to learn each other's personality, then your family or your surroundings is your life, and so
True, very true.
but yeah, so many people on my team have dogs and cats that my kids keep seeing them. And so there was an intervention in my house not too long ago where it's like, Dad, we're getting a dog. I'm like, okay. So which, by the way, is apparently super hard to do, to adopt a pet during COVID. One, to go find the pet, but then two, to actually, apparently there's hundreds of applications per pet. So anyway, it's a whole other struggle I never thought I'd have. So
yeah, it's amazing how some systems like that have excelled during this pandemic, because of the amount of people that are home. It's funny, my husband and I, but we were driving down a road and we're like, oh my gosh, that house has improved, and that house has improved, and they've painted their house, and they have a new deck, and because people are using their home to work from their home. So there's definitely been benefits to certain places. So with California obviously being one of the most stringent lockdown measures in place, how do you see that impacting the workforce, or do you see that impacting the workforce?
yeah, I mean, we always had a plan at Contentful to find a second hub. We knew San Francisco, I mean, in fairness, North America is mainly our go-to-market space. So all of our engineering and product is in Berlin. And so that's a different story. And I'll get to that real quick, but in a second. But we, being go-to-market, you're going to the market. And so San Francisco is not exactly the most central place in the US. So we've always thought about, where do we go next? Plus pay, salary, living here is always ridiculous. It still is, not as crazy, let's say, this time last year. But it's still cheaper to go somewhere else. So it actually just accelerated Denver for us as a second US hub, to the point of most companies, you wouldn't start hiring the location until you have at least a WeWork or something. In our case, it's like, forget about it. Just go hire people in Denver. We'll solve the physical location later. So we went big on that. Most of our jobs now in the US, if it's not a regional role, it's going to be focused in Denver. It helps us with compensation. It's an option for us to help relocate people who don't want to be in the Bay Area. So it's COVID's affected that quite a bit, and we've tried to ride with that, and we think we found a great solution. Same with EMEA is 70% of our talent in Berlin are not from Germany. And so two things there was just one, that was great for us from a diversity, from a expat, just homogenous kind of different thought process experience kind of group that was international. But the issue we had was now there's only so much software technical talent in Berlin, which is why we quote unquote imported quite a bit of it. But now the challenge is, it's with COVID, people don't want to move. It's hard to get a visa, or not hard, but just takes a lot more time.
Yeah.
So that's also started our plans too on where else can we headquarter in Europe, and do we even want to headquarter? I mean, well, we do, but a future conversation would be where next? Where else can we support a centralized space for lots of people? So
Makes sense.
so yeah, but COVID definitely has sparked quite a bit of and pushed up conversations that we hadn't had in wouldn't have had in years.
Yeah, you make a lot of sense there. Yeah, as stated, it's interesting how times have shifted. And so, with that, I mean, what are your hopes for 2021 and beyond when it comes to how we work? Do you think we should revert to the status quo, or evolve into some sort of hybrid between, where we were before and where COVID forced us to shift?
Yeah, I mean, recruiting has always been interesting, especially if a company has goals like diversity, inclusion, and equality. It's just definitely one of those days.
Yep.
But also certain talent, certain experience, certain skills, and then you're limited by location. And so it's always been one of my kind of things in the past of one, you should hire internally as best you can, like grow the talent that you have.
Yes.
But also the amount of money we waste on external support to go find someone in a specific skill, in a specific location, doing a specific thing, when you could have put that money as someone who is already there, committed, and could probably add more value sooner than later. So that's one thing I always thought has been a huge driver for me, is what does internal mobility look like? How do we start from within? But then the flip side of that is everywhere I go, you always hear, we want to hire the best talent or the best person for the job. And that's kind of like recruiting mantra. But then you put constraints on that. It's like, go find the best, but can they move here? Do they have 5-year experience? And I think this is a bad requirement, but still floats out there sometimes. Are they from a good school? And ABCA, XYZ, and go find that person, 5 miles away from here. And so I think where the future holds is people have more options, companies will have more options. There will be the world. A lot of this is also regulation, visa, immigration, but I think the world will find a way to expand their talent virtually, digitally, and all of a sudden the whole idea of expanding your ability and finding the right skill to build what you want is going to be very different in the future. And so it already is. And companies are dealing with today, how do I figure out now, like, okay, I've already made the exception. I'm going to hire in Florida for what I would normally hire in San Francisco. But now what do I do? Is this the norm? Is this not the norm? And are we going fully virtual? What are our benefits? What do we pay in what region? And so these conversations are happening today that people have avoided for years. And it's too many companies have made decisions to find the right way to build their teams. And that'll continue. So it'll be very much a more, in my opinion, international, global, hands-on and virtual world that's going to reshape how we find talent.
I completely agree with you on that. I've worked with so many clients that had very stringent rules about, they have to be located here, et cetera. Even if a skill set was prevalent on the West Coast, they wanted them, here, local. And I found more and more clients being very flexible about a more virtual workforce, which I think is brilliant. I think that's what we
Yeah.
should be doing. It opens you up to more talent and better being able to service your needs. And I love what you said about looking internally and, those opportunities that you have for your internal workforce. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. We appreciate you spending time with us. To the viewers, I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you got a lot out of it. Until next time, leave a comment, like this video, smash the share button, #level up.